Hey guys, so I've had a lot of questions about what I'm doing for a part-time job. And so this video is to answer that, and I thought while I'm at it, I might as well explain all the other little part-time jobs and side hustles that I've had this year. Now, the reason that I didn't really tell you guys a whole lot about the new part-time job is because I really didn't think it mattered, and I didn't really think anyone would care. I got the job through networking, and it's super part-time. I do it whenever I can. It's flexible work, and I just send them an invoice for it. So it's not like I'm working at a store or something like that. It's super casual. But since you guys wanted to know about that, I'll tell you. But just so I can explain how I ended up doing that, and so that I can clarify some things I might have left out of my budget reviews, let's hop back to the beginning of this year. At the beginning of the year, I was working part-time at Target, part-time at Whole Foods. I was working full-time at Lyft, but planning to switch to part-time there once I got a full-time job. And then starting January 2nd, I started the full-time job that I have now. And at that time, I went part-time with Lyft. And with Target and Whole Foods going on too, I knew I had to quit something, so I quit Target. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link to it up above explaining why. That left me working my new full-time job Sunday through Thursday for 8 hours a day, and then I had Whole Foods Friday and Saturday for 8 hours a day. Now, I did eventually leave Whole Foods, and I will make a video about that, but I haven't made it yet, and I'm going to explain what all happened when I worked there and why I ended up leaving there as well. And when I left Whole Foods, I thought that I had my additional income covered. Because the thing is, while I make pretty decent money at my full-time job, just because I have so much debt and therefore I have so many minimum payments per month, I mean right now, and I'm on reduced payment plans, I pay $770 a month toward just my minimum payments. So my regular full-time job doesn't cover that, and I have to have this side income in order to make all of those payments. When I left Whole Foods, I thought I had that covered because I had two different things lined up. Number one is TaskRabbit. I thought that I was going to be working for TaskRabbit. That's when I first signed up for it. And that didn't quite work out the way that I thought it was going to work out. In fact, it took something like 8 months for them to actually get me approved. Even though I've made pretty decent money with TaskRabbit, I've actually had quite a few problems with it, and I'm going to be making eventually a separate video telling you guys about my experience working there, although I am continuing at this point to work for them. The other thing I thought I had lined up was VIPKid, and that is teaching English online to kids in China. It was actually another YouTuber who lives here in Columbus who got me signed up for that, and I really wanted to make a video about that because all the videos that I find are positive, and while I didn't exactly have a negative experience, I decided not to work for them. So I wanted to put that experience out there, but I didn't make that video just out of respect for her, the YouTuber who recommended me for it. So I didn't make that video, but I will tell you here, my problem with VIPKid came through doing that training. Essentially, the training was that if you went in person and did this, you didn't have to do the interview, except that you did still have to do the interview. After we got there, they told us it was just kind of prep for the interview, but you still had to do it. So it defeated that purpose. But after getting more hands-on experience with how this would actually function, I realized that it wasn't worth the time or the money, especially the money, which was a huge letdown. You know, I had just quit Whole Foods thinking that I had this lined up and that I was going to make $14 an hour minimum. And that is true, if you get classes, which are not guaranteed. But if you do get those scheduled, then they are 25-minute sessions, and then you get a 5-minute break, it's break plus talking to the parents. So if you get two back-to-back, it's $7 per class, and then that would be $14 an hour. But you do, of course, have to pay taxes out of that. You're an independent contractor, so you have to pay the employer portion of it too. And the thing that really made it not work for me was when I got to training and they told us that for every single class that you teach, you have to have 4 different categories of props. So you can have an unlimited number of props, but they have to be from 4 different categories. And from somebody who used to be a teacher, albeit a long time ago, that was 2003 and 2004, using props really isn't my teaching style, and there's no room for creativity in teaching style here. It's a prescribed method of this is how you have to do it, and this is it, you don't have any choice in it. So you have to have these props, and the props, each one of them at a minimum is going to cost $1, right? That's what they told us, was to go to Target and go to the dollar bin and get these props. Well, if you think about you're teaching a half-hour class for $7 and you have to spend a minimum of $4 on toys for props, then that means you're making $3, which would mean you're making $6 an hour if you get those classes lined up. The other thing that they told us, and I don't even know how this would work in practice, is that you don't know what class you're teaching and that they don't allow you to review the material because they say there's no need to. It's so simple. But how could you possibly know to go buy or what props to go buy if you don't know what the material is before you teach the class? So anyway, once I figured out that after buying props and paying taxes, I was probably going to be making about $2 an hour, I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so that is why I suddenly stopped talking about doing VIPKid. After that fell through, I was continuing to wait on my background check to process for TaskRabbit, which I felt was taking an inordinately long time. But I signed up to do Shipt and Instacart. I think I've talked about Instacart a lot on here because I do recruiting for them now, but before I get into that, let's talk about me actually delivering groceries. So if you don't know what Shipt and Instacart are, they are sort of like Uber and Lyft in that they are apps that give you work, and they're 2 competing companies that do the exact same thing. They do them slightly differently, but they do the exact same thing. They deliver groceries. Well, I signed up for one of them first. I can't even remember now which one. I made a video about the sign-on process, which I'll link up above, that goes into more detail about what does what and how that process went. But essentially, I got into the habit of working more for Shipt because it was easier for me to actually get batches through them. Most of the batches were not worth my time because it would be like an hour or an hour and a half worth of work for $7, and then of course I had to pay taxes out of that, so it just wasn't worth it. But what I was doing is I was waiting until late at night, like 11, 12, 1 a.m., and they would add these bonuses to what are called the Metro orders. And what would happen is I would get like maybe it's a $7 order for an hour of work, but they would add a $20 bonus. So I'd get $27. I did this for a few weeks until I was actually sitting down breaking down the numbers. And I was like, yeah, okay, I worked an hour and a half for $27. Let's just for simplicity's sake say it's a $27 an hour. Well, that sounds good, but I had to drive 10 miles to Meijer to pick it up, 10 miles to the customer, and then 15 miles or so back to my house. Well, when you look at the mileage deduction, the standard mileage deduction from the IRS for that, and see what that value is that you'd have to deduct for that amount of mileage, and then what you're going to be paying in taxes to be self-employed doing this, again, I was making like $2 or $3 an hour. I wasn't losing money, but it just didn't make sense. My time to get things done at home or even just to relax was much more valuable. The same thing really was with Instacart. And Instacart, same thing after I factored in mileage and everything, it just wasn't making me money. It was making $1, $2 or $3 an hour. After doing that, I thought, look, I've spent all these months without a car. I've saved up all this money finally from the bonuses I got from recruiting for Lyft. And I'd finally gotten my car mostly fixed. And I was like, look, I don't want to put all these miles on it for $1 or $2 an hour and get to the point where I have to do another repair that I can't afford or be without a car again. from doing these types of apps that I have to use my car for. So I was like, I'm not going to do any more of these types of apps. The only ones that I would do would be ones where maybe I have to travel to a location to do something, but if the actual job involves my car traveling or delivering or hauling something, then it's not worth it for me. And with that being the case, I signed up for Wag and Rover. Now, I am going to get back to the other thing that I do for Instacart, which is recruiting. But let's talk about Wagon Rover for a minute. Wagon Rover are sort of, they're dog walking and dog sitting apps. And I thought, well, with this I'm not really going to be driving. I'm just going to drive to the person's house, do what I need to do, and drive home. So it wasn't really using my car other than just commuting. So it'd be about the same as commuting to my full-time job every day, no problem. I can't remember now which one is which, but one of those apps has a very difficult exam that you have to take to finish your sign up. And I say it's very difficult as someone who has had dogs in the past and really likes animals, and my mom used to run a cat rescue. I've spent a lot of time around animals, and even I found this test to be incredibly difficult. Sure, I could have probably just Googled all the answers, but I didn't do that because I honestly thought that I would know the answers, and that wasn't the case. I never got a response from them at all, but I'm fairly certain that I failed the test. So then I signed up for their rival, whichever one that was. And I had a really difficult time signing up for that one because it says on their main website that anybody can do this as long as you pass a background check. But I was going through the sign-up process, and it became increasingly more clear that they wanted somebody who owned a home and had pets. Because I got to the point where you had to describe your yard. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not doing pet sitting unless it's in their house. Those are I didn't sign up for that category to pet sit in my house. So why does it matter what my yard's like? But there was no way to skip it. You had to put it in there. Like, you literally had to submit a picture of your yard. So I did a Google image search and found a nice yard and put that on there. And got to the next screen, and now I have to set up a profile for my pet. So it literally won't let you pass this. The only way that you can sign up to be a dog sitter or walker is for you to have a dog too. And I was like, you know what? I was uncomfortable making up the yard thing. I'm not going to create a fake animal to make a profile about to do this. I'm just done. And the other thing that bothered me about both of those two is that they always wanted you to meet up with the owners and the dog before the time that you were scheduled. So you're supposed to meet up with the dog like on a different day before the person who wanted to hire you would decide if they were going to hire you. And I'm like, well, I'm going to take an hour out of my time that's not paid to maybe get an hour of work or 2 hours of work. It just didn't make any sense at all. So that was not something that I was gonna do. So let's circle back around here to Instacart Recruiting. Instacart Recruiting, I've made a couple of videos. I'll link one up above about the sign up process. If you do want to sign up to deliver for Instacart, then I will split the sign-on bonus for you. And that can be up to, I think it's $2,500, so it could be up to half of that. And my code is going to be down in the pinned comment in the description if you want to do that, even if you just do it to support the channel. Thank you. It really helps to get those bonuses to put toward debt. But what I really want to talk about here is that I decided that it wasn't worth my time to do Instacart itself. So I decided to recruit people for Instacart. I was, at that time, still working for Lyft as a recruiter, and this is very similar in nature. So I thought, I can make money doing this, right? So that's what I did, is I kept my Instacart account active, but only did it to refer people. And I've referred quite a few people into being, I don't know what they call them, drivers, deliverers, people for Instacart, and that has been very good. I mean, really, that's kind of what gets me by. If you look at my budget reviews month to month, is getting these like little surprise bonuses that pop up. And that was just my thought process of, hey, how can I still make money from this app but not have to put mileage on my car? That leads me to my current part-time job. What I do is I scout out properties for a real estate brokerage. Essentially, what they're looking for is properties that are in fairly good neighborhoods but are maybe like the bad property on the block where they can flip it and sell for, a profit. I have a lot of real estate experience, several years, so when I signed up for this, they didn't question it. Essentially, I found the position through networking. It's a local company here in town, and originally I was supposed to actually be an employee of the company. That was when I agreed to the hourly payment amount. Then they told me, well, no, you're going to be a contractor. And truthfully, I probably should have asked for higher pay after that, because obviously I have to pay more in taxes. The way this position is supposed to work is it's $12 an hour, and then if they buy any of the properties, they're supposed to pay me a $300 commission, which that $300 commission would be great. But it's never happened, and I've submitted probably a couple hundred addresses for them to look at. I have a feeling that they have bought them, and then they're just not informing me that they have bought them so that they don't have to pay the commission, because I would have no other way of knowing. So yeah, not really happy about that. Feels kind of slimy, but I'm still making my $12 an hour. Now, the position is actually called driver, which means that I'm supposed to be driving these routes. But obviously at $12 an hour, I wouldn't make any money if I drove around for miles looking at houses and copying down addresses. So what I do is I drive to the location just like I would commute to my full-time job every day. I park and I walk the entire route. So essentially I'm getting paid for exercising, which is a really cool aspect of it. There are some things about this job that are pretty limiting in what I can do and how I can do it. And I mean, the biggest thing is daylight, right? Obviously, if I'm going to look at the condition of houses and look at the addresses, I have to do this during the day. And I work during the day most days, so that's a problem for me to get out there, right? Like, what would probably be the best for me is something I could do either after dark or something I can just do at home so I can do it at any time. But this doesn't work like that. The other thing is the weather. Some of the weekends that I've gone out to do this, it's been ungodly hot, like over 100 degrees, right? And I have to go walk outside in all of this. Occasionally it rains, which would keep me from going out, depending on how bad the rain is. And here in Columbus, it's already started to turn cold, and it's cold 9 months out of the year here. So I don't think this is something that I can continue to do much past maybe October or November, just when it turns cold permanently. The only way I could do it would be to drive, and obviously it wouldn't be worth my money at that point. But in case you haven't picked up already, what I do is essentially go to a certain neighborhood that they've told me about. I walk down every street. I identify houses that are maybe distressed or might not be able to sell very well on the market, and that's kind of what I use my real estate knowledge to identify. And then I send them a list of addresses and an invoice for my time, and that's literally it. So what I'm doing for side work or a side hustle, it's constantly changing, but the setup that I have right now is that I work my full-time job and I set my availability for TaskRabbit. And TaskRabbit, if I don't get something lined up for the weekend days there, then I'll see if there's overtime available at work. Because TaskRabbit, I'm making around like $27 an hour. I make $24 an hour overtime at work, so that's the next one if that's available. If that's not available, then I will go out and work for the job at $12 an hour. That's the current setup. Obviously, as it gets colder, I'm not going to be able to do the walking around real estate thing anymore. I'm going to try to do it as long as I can, but it does depend on the weather. So I will be looking for something this fall, and maybe that's just putting more time into YouTube, or maybe it is, I don't know, finding something. I haven't looked into it yet at all. If you guys have any ideas, I would love to hear them. They just have to be, worth my time as far as like what they pay. But I'm definitely willing to listen to ideas about that, for what to replace this small part-time job with. And then I'm hoping that they're still doing this program in the spring and I can get back out there again once it's warm enough again, probably around June. It's about when it warms up here. So anyway, guys, I hope that gives you a better picture of what it is that I'm doing. And I know I mentioned TaskRabbit and I didn't explain it, but that's because TaskRabbit is a dumpster fire and I'm going to be making an entirely separate video. It's just sort of the thing of when it works, it's great because the hourly rate is incredible. Like I said, around $27 an hour. It's just that it often doesn't work, and then when it doesn't work, it's a nightmare. So yeah, that's gonna be an interesting story to tell you guys if you like my rants and my story times about jobs. But I am still currently working for them because the money's good and I need it. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions for side work that I can get into this winter when it's cold, and I mean Columbus is like day after tomorrow cold, just leave it down below. So obviously it's got to be something indoors, but I do need to replace this side job with something by then. So give me some ideas. Thanks for watching, and who knows, maybe it'll just be me making a ton of YouTube videos to get that AdSense coming in every month.